Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to say thank you for coming in our presentation. It is great to see you all, guys. Let me introduce ourselves. My name is Ginta and my last student number is 90. And my friends, Winona Shafira, and her last student number is 77. Today, in this occasion, we will discuss about completion or fill in the blank test items. So now we are going to the first slide. So the first slide tells about no-hit test construction. Completion items are especially useful in assessing mastery of factual information when a specific word or phrase is important to know. They preclude the kind of guessing that is possible on limited choice items since they require a definite response rather than simple recognition of the correct answer. Because only a short answer is required, their use on a test can enable a wide sampling of content. A completion item requires the students to answer the question or to finish an incomplete statement by filling in the blank with the correct word or phrase. So there is the example. According to Freud, personality is made of three major systems: the blah 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 and the blah 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 and the blah blah blah. So now we are going to the next slide. So the next slide is about what about synthesis and evaluation. Completion item tends to test only rote, repetitive response and may encourage a fragmented study style since memorization of bits and pieces will result in higher scores. They are more difficult to score than first choice items and scoring often must be done by the test writer since more than one answer may have to be considered correct. So now we are going to the next slide. So the next slide is about, is short answer the same thing? A distinction should be made between completion, often referred to as fill in the blank, and short answer question. With completion question, the response is usually one or two words that fit on a line provided by the tester. Short answer question may require one sentence or even a paragraph to fully answer the question. They are, short answer question are appropriate in measuring a student's understanding of principle or the ability to solve problems or apply the principles. Short answer questions go beyond simple recall or recognition. They require students to consider various factors and to arrive at solution whether they deal with mathematics or other situation. Okay, now we are going to the next slide. So there are advantages and disadvantages about completion test items. Okay, so now we are going to the advantages first. So the advantages, the first one is good for who, what, where, when content. And the second is minimize guessing. And the third is encourage more intensive study. Student must know the answer versus recognizing the answer. And the third or the last one is can usually provide an objective measure of student achievement or ability. So now we are going to the disadvantages. The first one is difficult to assess higher levels of learning because the answer to completion items are usually limited to a few words. And the second is difficult to construct so that the desired response is clearly indicated. And the third is may overemphasize memorization of facts. And number four is question may have more than one correct answer. And the last one is scoring is time consuming. Okay, now we are going to the next slide. So the next slide is about example of completion test or fill in the blank. So there are 10 examples of completion test or fill in the blank. So the first one is a fill in the blank question asks students to supply rather than blah 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 the answer. So in this situation, the students will be fill the word or the answer from their answer to the blank paper or blank question. And next, number 2, the main problem in constructing completion items is to limit the number of possible blah 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 blah. Okay, number 2 is same with question number 1. The students will fill their answer or their word to the question. And the third is put blanks at the blah 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 of the statement rather than blah blah blah. And number 4, completion items are faster to answer than blah 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 items because there are no alternatives to consider. And next, number 5, make the blah 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 of equal length. And there are more 5 questions again, but I only read the 5 question of example of completion test or fill in the blanks. So now we are going to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide is about suggestion for writing completion test items. So the first one is about omit only significant words from the statement. There are undesirable and desirable. So the first one, I will give an example of undesirable. The undesirable is every atom has a central blah 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 called a nucleus. And the desirable is every atom has a center core called a or and. Okay, the second is do not omit so many words from the statement that the intended meaning is lost. So the example of undesirable is the blah 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 were to Egypt as the word to Persia and as blah 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 were to the early trips of Israel. And the desirable is the the parrots were to Egypt as the blah 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 were to Persia and as blah 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 were to the early tribes of Israel. So now we are going to the next slide. And the third is avoid obvious clues to the correct response. The undesirable is most of the United States libraries are organized according to the blah 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 decimal system, and the desirable is which organizational system is used by most of the United States libraries, blah 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 blah. So number 4 is be sure there is only one correct response. The undesirable is trees which seed their leaf annually are blah 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 blah. And the desirable is trees which seed their leaves annually are called by blah blah blah. Okay? Now we are going to the next slide. Okay, the next slide is avoid grammatical clues to the correct response. And if the indefinite article is required before a blank, use and so that the student does not know if the correct answer begins with a vowel or consonant. Okay, and the undesirable is a subatomic particle with a negative electric charge is called an and blah 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 blah. And the desirable is a subatomic particle with a negative electric charge is called an or a. And number 6 is, if possible, put the blank at the end of the statement rather than at the beginning. Asking for a response before the students understand the intent of the statement can be confusing and may require more reading time. So the undesirable is blah 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 is the measure of central tendency that is most affected by extremely high or low scores. So the desirable is the measure of central tendency that is most affected by extremely high or low scores is the blah 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 blah. So now we are going to the next slide. Okay, there are 3 attention students for completion test taking tips. So the first tips is read the question with the intent to give an answer and make the sentence grammatically correct. In this process, it is important to focus on how the sentence is written. For example, if the blank is preceded by the article an, you know the word that goes in the blank must start with a vowel. Okay? And the second tips is concentrate on the number of blanks in the sentence and the length of the space. The last maker is giving you clues and the answer by adding space and making them longer. And the third tips is provide a descriptive answer when you cannot think of the exact word or words. Okay? The instructor will often give you credit or partial credit when you demonstrate that you have studied the material and can give a credible answer even when you have not given the exact words. Okay? Now we are going to the next slide. Okay? So the next slide is about essay items. Okay. Essay tasks present a realistic task to the students. A typical essay task usually consists of a small number of questions to which the student is expected or recall and recognize knowledge in logical integrated answer, and an example of each type follows. The first one is extended response. Compare the writings of Bret Hart and Mark Twain in terms of setting, depth of characterization, and dialogue styles of their main characters. And next, short answer. Identify research method used to study the SR, stimulus and response, and SOR, stimulus organism response, theories of personality. Okay? Now we are going to the next slide. So the next slide is about the benefit of essay tasks. The main advantages of essay and short answer items are that they permit students to demonstrate achievement of such higher level objectives as analyzing and critical thinking. Essay tests also give the instructor an opportunity to comment on students' progress, the quality of their thinking, the depth of their understanding, and the difficulties they may be having. Unfortunately, essay tasks consisting only of written items permit only a limited sampling of content learning due to the time required for students to respond. They favor students who possess good writing skills and neatness. Okay, the next materials will be delivered by Winona Shafira.
Okay, the next presentation is about advantage and disadvantage. The first point is student less likely to catch, and the second easy to construct. The third stimulates more study, and the fourth allows students to demonstrate ability to organize knowledge, expression, express opinions so originality. And the next point is disadvantage. The first can limit amount of material test, therefore has decreased validity. And the second, subjective, potentially unreliable scoring. And the third, time consuming to score. The next is standard press for writing essay test items. The first, agreement or disagreement. It means the student is being asked to assert and support a thesis with evidence. The second, analyze. It's meant analyzing is picking apart of the whole. The third, classification and division. Grouping items into a category according to a consistent principle. The fourth, compare or contrast. It's mean comparing show similarities while contrasting points out difference. And the next, cause and effect. It's mean establish is link between two things and also to describe the outcome. The next, defined. It's mean consists of three parts such as term, class, and differentiating characteristic. And the seven, define and give an example of. Ask students to not only define the term but to supply an example. The next is describe. Describes is requires students to explain something in detail. And the next, discuss. It's meant to focus and my elitist focus over generalized unsupported response. The next, illustrate. Give example and or analogies to demonstrate a particular process or idea or step in a series. And then summarize is meant the overall view of some process, speech, play, concept. The next point is suggestion of writing essay test item. The first, formulate the question so that the task is clearly defined for the student. Use words that I am the student to the approach you want them to take. Words like discuss and explain can be ambiguous. If you use discuss, then give specific instruction as to what points should be discussed. There are two. The first, undesirable. It means discuss Karl Marx philosophy. And desirable, compare Marx and Nietzsche in their analysis of the underlying problems of their day in 19th century European society. And the second, pay attention to the number of items. It's meant in order to obtain broader sampling of course content, use a relatively large number of questions requiring shorter answer. Shorten answers one half page rather than just a few questions involving long answer 2 until 3 pages. The next, avoid the use of optional questions on an essay test. When students answer different questions, they are actually taking different tests. Use for optional questions also affect the reliability of the scoring. If we are going to compare students for scoring purpose, then all students should perform the same task. The next, write essay items at different levels of learning. It means the goal is to write essay items that measure higher cognitive process. Try to use verbs that elicit the kind of thinking you want the student to demonstrate. The five, choose a choose a scoring model. The major task in scoring tests is to is to maintain consistency to make sure that answers of equal quality are given the same number of points. There are two approaches to scoring essay items. The first is analytic. Prepare a ideal answer, then read and compare student answers with model answer. If all elements are present, students receive the maximum number of points. To achieve an overall test score, the instructor adds up the points earned on separate questions. The second, holistic. It means this method involves considering the student answer whole and judging the total quality of the answer relative to other student response or total quality of the answer based on certain criteria that you develop. And next, prepare students to take essay exam. It means essay stats are valid measures of student achievement only if students know how to take them. Therefore, take some class time to tell students how to prepare for and how to take an easy exam. Use old exam questions and let students see what an A answers looks like and how it differs from A and C answer. The next point is a four-step process in grading essay stats item. The first step, when the assessment is given, figure out what is the purpose of the assessment. Share the criteria you decide upon with your student. And then provide models of your grading criteria to your student. Step 2. When the assessments are turned in, quickly overview a percentage of the papers. Skim some papers that you feel are representative in the student work. Use these papers to start for pills, high, medium high, medium, medium low, and low. Step 3. Start the grading. Always use a pencil on your first run through. Having separated the papers into pills, do an initial read through and assess preliminary impression of the work. Now, read each paper for how it addresses the criterion identified for the assessment. Step 4. Mark up the papers. Interactive grading process questions and presents the student needs to resolve. For example, is it what you mean? How does this connect to your main point? The next point is attention student essay test taking tips. The first, organize your talk before you begin to write. It's meant a short outline on separate piece of paper will improve your thinking. The second, paraphrase the original question to form your introductory statement. This benefits you in two ways. First, it helps you get the question straight in your mind. Second, it might protect you from the teacher. The third, remember, neatness counts. Write your answer clearly so the reader will be able to decode your writing and understand your ideas. The fourth, verb alert. Read each essay question with the intent to identify the verbs or words that give you direction. And last, use the principles of good English composition. From a clear thesis statement or statement of purpose and place it as near to the beginning as possible. Okay, it is enough from us. Thank you for your great attention. If you have any question, let's. Okay. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.